I'm Carrie Adams, and you're listening to Carrie's Connoisseurs, coming to you from Solid Gold Podcasts. Here we talk to the movers and shakers, the drinkers, the dreamers, and all the people who make it happen in the liquor and luxury industries from around the world. Well, hello everybody. It's Monday. It's not Monday. Callum, what's happening with me? It's Friday. I've had such a week. Welcome to Carrie's Connoisseurs. It's Friday. I've been to Cape Town. I've been back. I've been in. I've been out. I've been up. I've been down. But my favorite thing of the week is my recording time. And today I am doing an interview with Adam Mason. He's probably doesn't need too much of an introduction, but people listen to me from all around the world. So Adam Mason is a winemaker in South Africa. A very clever one. Adam, welcome to Carrie's Connoisseurs. How are you?
Hello, Carrie. I'm good. It's good to be on your show. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It was quite opportune, really, because you invited me to taste some new wines that I wasn't even aware of. I didn't even know they were available. I didn't even know there was a farm called Terra Paisible. But as with everything you do, Adam Mason, we'll discover and explore that and tell everybody all about it. The wines are delicious. But before we do that, I want everybody to know what I know about Adam. Adam, the person, is a Johannesburg boy, which is probably why you're so nice, Adam. Sandown High School, I think you went to?
Correct.
Born and bred in Sandton. Tell us your life story quickly. I'll edit where I need to.
Okay. I actually was born and bred in Zim, or certainly born in Zim. Mm-hmm. And we sort of moved to Johannesburg probably when I was about 6. But those early years were very formative in my life experience. And basically spent most of my childhood in Joburg. We had a brief stint in Sydney for about 2 years as a family, emigrated and came back. And I found myself at the end of high school a little bit too young to go to university. It was the last year of the draft. And my father, who had been a soldier for 16 years and fought in a bush war, said to me, "You really shouldn't waste your time going to the army. You know, take a year off and go and travel, and when you come back, you can go and study." And I was that sort of ended up with me working in a factory just outside the town of Nantes on the west coast of France. And I was working on a line called the Contre-Colleuse, which is a very fancy sounding name, but it's actually a lap and pluck machine. I was sticking Yves Saint Laurent perfume boxes together, and I remember Jazz perfume was the one that I was assigned to.
Okay, well, I mean, it's
about Jazz perfume boxes as much as you want to know about the fluting and the corrugations and the grade.
Okay, well, I mean, it could have been worse. At least it was Yves Saint Laurent, and it wasn't some sort of tacky backstreet sort of label, hey?
No. So my neighbour on the line had a vineyard. And he was part of a small community growing in the Muscadet region, so very sort of lesser known but more up and coming region.
Yes.
What is I'm actually trying to remember the name of the grape that they grow there. I should be.
Where were we? Were you in the road?
No, Muscadet. So on the west coast.
Muscadet.
Loire Atlantique. It's Gros Plan, they call it, and it's a very innocuous white grape, but it was my first introduction to working in a vineyard. I was a porter, and I was sort of quite tall and lanky, and the vines were quite low to the ground. So all the little old ladies and the immigrants did the cutting, and I did the porting, and I would sort of jump over one row to the next, grabbing these punnets of grapes. And that was where my sort of introduction
and
to.
Why did you go there? I mean, were you interested in wine? Did you apply for a job, or was it just a means to an end?
Yeah, it was. So we had billeted a French student for a few years in Johannesburg. So my dad was a SAPI at the time, and they had a sort of a French a program of internship. And this chap came and stayed with us for 2 years in a row. He loved it so much, and he said, "Listen, if you ever want to come and stay with my family in France, you can come and stay." That was in the days when you could still get a visa fairly easily, and I guess I was
Yes.
much younger. So it was easy to
Yeah.
get a tourist slash kind of working traveling visa. And so I went and stayed with this guy's family for 6 months. I ended up working doing lots of different things, and one of which was working in this factory. And that's where I met these guys who owned a vineyard. So it was pretty much opportune, yeah.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how the universe works for us? If you look back on your life, nothing is by accident, really. It's somehow all by design, if you think of it. Hey.
I was having this
So-
conversation with my daughter the other day. It's one of life's big questions. I mean, is everything preordained, or are we kind of creatures of our own fate? And
what conclusion did you reach?
I don't think everything's preordained, but I think we are to a certain extent masters of our own destiny. We do make choices. Now the question is, are those choices? Are we even aware that we're making those choices, or have they been sort of predetermined? Perhaps.
Well, I'm old enough and cynical enough at this stage of the game to have watched the evolution of thought and everything that goes with it and around it. And especially in the last couple of years with the madness of COVID and what's happened to the world, I'm more convinced than ever that we're in a big sort of a fishbowl.
Big petri dish.
And I think a big petri dish, and I'm almost convinced that they're those white blokes, with those funny slanty navy blue eyes like that.
Yes.
And they're looking into that fishbowl and they're looking into that petri dish and they're saying, well, let's throw something in, we'll throw this in and see what they do, and then we'll throw that in. I think we're experiments, because I can't believe that all this happens by chance. There's just too many synchronicities in my life that have happened that make me feel like it's all been orchestrated by something or someone. Or is that a bit far-fetched? I am a Libran, so I romance a lot about a lot of shit, so you have to take that into account.
Look, I don't think it's. Yeah, I think it's one of life's great questions. So,
yeah, there's a couple of things we need to settle with. If we ever get beyond the blue and we meet whatever it is that created all of us, I got a lot of questions to be answered. And you?
Yeah, no, there's lots, eh? You caught me there. I wasn't thinking about this character. Of course, there's lots of questions. Yeah.
Well, this is supposed to be an interview about wine, but I think that in order to discover the stories that come out of Adam Mason's bottles, you need to know the stories that come out of Adam Mason's head and his heart as well. So I'm going to ask you lots of difficult questions, Adam.
Okay, I'm ready for you, Terry.
Keep talking to me. So you were in a Muscadet vineyard, and you were charming grannies who were cutting grapes on bush vines, from what I could
They taught
get.
me so many, what the French call gros mots. They taught me all the dirty words. It was fantastic. Yeah, it was great.
You see, I
All the
hope you
skinner,
remember
all the
to surround
village-
yourself with grannies forever.
No, grannies are the best.
Anyway, you went from the Muscadet vineyards to where?
From there, I actually sort of returned back to Johannesburg, just in time to start studying at Wits. So I was at Wits for a year. Spent many happy afternoons drinking at the bars and misbehaving. Well, yeah, it was awesome. It was a great year, actually, Wits. And then I transferred down to Stellenbosch because that was where I wanted to really study agriculture. And they were the ones that offered the viticulture and enology degree.
And was it your stint in France that sent you in the direction of enology and viticulture?
Absolutely. Yeah, up until that point I'd explored sort of forestry and sort of landscape gardening and horticulture. That's where I would have ended up had I not gone over to France and fallen in love with the whole process and tasted those grapes outside Nantes.
I know, it's a bit of a drug, really, isn't it?
Yeah. No, look, it's a phenomenal. It was like an epiphany, just realizing that I could spend the rest of my life learning and being involved with something as beautiful, and it's a miraculous kind of conversion. Grapes to wine.
I know, and
Kind of
you know,
it's
all
mystical, and
my
it's so many
all my
things.
all my favorite people in the wine industry are those people. They're philosophers and they're artists, and they're a bit left of center, and they think a lot.
But I think
And I
that's
think,
most winemakers, is it not? I mean, it is really a
yeah,
creative. It's a very creative
yeah,
endeavor, and I
it
think you've
is.
got to, it's interesting in the sense that you have to be able. It requires a certain amount of logic and sort of a factual basis and sort of academic rigor. But in order to really take things beyond that, you need to be able to think conceptually and outside the
Yes,
box and beyond the strictures of kind of academia. You need to be able to be, and you also have to have a desire to want to create something. And I think
yes.
for me,
Well,
that naturally attracts
definitely.
people who have those kind of funny crossovers.
It definitely does. I mean, the chemistry and the science of winemaking is easy. That's the easy bit because it's 1 and 1 is 2, and chemistry and maths
It wasn't very
really
easy for me.
can. They really can make the world go round. But you know what? You know what's not so easy is the emotional chemistry, because emotional chemistry isn't 1 and 1 is 2. Emotional chemistry is that little thing that turns the maths into something extraordinarily beautiful. And that's what my boys in the wine industry do. So that's why I've always loved wine. It is the sum of all parts. It's the coming together of the maths and science and the emotional chemistry that makes this gorgeous product. So you went off to Stelli's and you studied enology and viticulture, and it's a BSc, isn't it? Basically, it's
Yeah,
a 4-year
so
undergrad. Yeah,
correct.
did that, and then I think you were in a lot of places that many people don't even know you were in. You worked with Flagstone and Boschendal and Mulderbosch. We all know about Mulderbosch. I think Mulderbosch sort of rocketed your reputation into the stratosphere because you really did make beautiful wines at Mulderbosch. I think the Faithful Hound is still possibly one of the most well-known and favorite wines in South Africa. And I always associate you with that, not that it was your dog or anything like that, but when you got to Mulderbosch, you made Faithful Hound taste so much nicer than he ever tasted before. And then you also started your own brand, Marvelous, which I want to speak to you about. But you did a business side to wine as well. You didn't only always make wine. I mean, what did you do for Lasswaite's? I read somewhere that you did
Yeah,
something for Lasswaite's.
so that was straight after varsity. That was the first job that I ever had. Because of my experience in France, my conversational French was pretty good. And at the end
Yes.
of my course, the lecturer said, listen, there's a company in France looking for winemakers to go and work in the south of France, but you need to be able to speak French. And here's the guy's number, give them a call. So I did that, and just through being able to speak to the guy in French, I got a job working in the south of France doing extreme kind of dog's body work. And I worked for Laithwaite's for about 4 years. I went backwards and forwards. So that was in the time that was from 97 to 2000. And I
Yes.
worked for Boschendal and Flagstone in between, but then I ended up staying in France for about a year, working for they've gone under various names: Bordeaux Direct, Direct Wines, Laithwaite's. They're the biggest mail order company in the world, wine mail order.
I
And
know, they're quite
they run,
remarkable.
yeah, they run the Sunday Times the Wine Club, they run the Wall Street Journal Wine Club, they run British Airways Wine Club. So they do a host of kind of back end stuff, but then they've also got their own kind of club, and fascinating company. I did learn a lot, and it was good to be in France and solidify all of my sort of academic kind of knowledge. And then I guess business-wise, when I came back to South Africa, I did want to know more about business, and I took a position
Yeah.
as the general manager of a business called International Wine Services, and that
Yes.
was working with Kim Milne, who had started it, and it was sold to Scottish and Newcastle a few years after he started it.
Yes.
They were
Yes.
just brokers, merchants, But I was the GM, woefully kind of ill-equipped to be the GM. But I did a passable job there. But what was interesting for me there was learning about the trade, and learning
Yeah.
about pricing and how the supermarkets worked and all the different kind of channels of selling wine. So it was
It's
my first
invaluable.
the trade. It was important. Yeah, I'm glad I did it.
Yeah.
And
It's very
that
invaluable.
so that ended in 2003, and then the big break in my career really came when Ross left Klein Constantia, and I got
That's
the job.
right. You went
Yeah.
to Klein Constantia. I've forgotten
Yeah.
about that.
So that was my really lucky break, I would say. It was such an improbable thing. I mean, I remember dreaming. I actually remember as a kid coming down from Zimbabwe. We drove down in my dad's Peugeot 504. You know, the one with the little.
Oh, yeah, I remember those cars.
And we drove all the way down to Cape Town, and I will never forget visiting Groot Constantia. I must have been about 5 years old.
Yeah.
And I still remember the smell of cobra polish and, the copper brasso, the thatch. I remember those smells vividly.
I know. I can smell them as we speak. I can smell those
right?
smells.
It's so nostalgic. But
Yeah.
I think that must have been kind of subconsciously with me my whole life. And then, you talk about fate, and I'm going to go, well, maybe there is something to it, because I ended up working at Klein Constantia, where really it probably had all begun for me when I was 5 years old. So
Wow.
perhaps the wheel does kind of turn, and perhaps these
Oh,
things
it does. There's no doubt in my mind. We'll open a gorgeous bottle of wine one night at my house, and we'll debate it. But I'm sure I'm right. I think you were probably guided in that direction.
Well, it did feel like it at the time, I must say.
No, definitely. And Klein Constantia, I mean, Lowell Eurster, I think Dougie, his father, bought that farm when he was already quite big. But
Yeah.
the Eursters did put their stamp on the Constantia Valley. And Klein
Right.
Constantia was such a beautiful place. In fact, that's the first time I met you, Adam Mason,
Yes,
was when
that's
you were
right.
the winemaker at Klein Constantia.
I
It was
think
such a beautiful place. And the wine, it was big shoes to fill, because Rossi had been there for a very long time, Ross Gower.
Yeah.
And he was a great winemaker.
And
and
I
of
was
course,
terrified.
you must have been terrified because
I was
of
terrified.
Van der Constance, maybe.
Yeah, it was definitely because of Anna Constance. The first person who ever saw me was Joss Baker's husband, who passed away not long
Yes.
afterwards. But
Yes.
apparently he had been a sort of fervent supporter of the Klein Constantia Riesling, and he was already at that stage quite ill. And he walked up to me and he sort of poked his crabby finger in my face and says, "Don't you change my Riesling, boy."
I'm sure he didn't say that. I'm sure he swore at you.
And I remember it was like Joss going, "You listen to him." So there was definitely that sense of, who's this kid that nobody knows, who's come
Yes.
and taken Ross's position. And yeah, it was a tough gig for a couple of years.
No,
And
onto one of our farms that had like a serious pedigree. I mean, for those
Yeah.
people who are listening or watching, Van der Constance comes from Klein Constantia, and it is, without any doubt, the most famous wine from the South African wine industry over many, many years. I think it was first made 300 years ago or something equally bizarre. But it's
Yeah.
a natural sweet wine that everybody, famous soldiers, and who was the bloke at St. Helena? Nelson.
Napoleon, and
Napoleon.
he was rationed it during his exile, and I mean,
Yes.
you name it, Jane Austen, Baudelaire.
Yes.
They mentioned it in dispatches.
They all wrote about it. It was a hugely famous wine. I mean,
was
I
a
would have
mythical-
shat myself. I wouldn't have known how to make that wine.
But I only really felt comfortable 4 years after I'd started working at Klein Constantia, because that was when the 2004 was released. That was my first Van der Constance. I had to wait 4 years in order to have a sort of a proper vetting by the trade. So that was a four very sweaty and uncomfortable years, I can tell you.
And
But
Adam,
Lowell
in
was
the
great.
meantime,
To Lowell's credit, he was very kind and very forgiving and very patient. A wonderful man. I enjoyed
he's a
working-
wonderful man. I think Lowell is in America now,
Yes, he's
Hey?
in San Diego, yeah.
What's he doing? Is he in the wine industry?
Yeah, no. So he's patented a system whereby he completely removed bottled wines from the process. So sourced wines up in Napa, had them trucked down to his little wine bar in San Diego in their barrels, and decanted from the barrel directly into either carafes, which were then served at the restaurant, or into reusable bottles, which people then took away and brought back. It's an
What a
ingenious
clever
project.
little guy he is, hey?
And he thought he was so clever because he lives in a place called La Jolla, which is sort of spelled La, and then Jolla is Jolla, so La Jolla. And his company's called LJ Wines, and it's Lol Uster.
Lol, yes, it's terribly
Sounds
sounds like Lol, yeah.
Yeah.
Adam, so you moved from there. It was from there that you went to Hydra Holdings, I think, owned Mulderbosch, hey?
It had just been bought by Terroir Capital. So it was just. So I met an American crowd in 2008. I went to the United States for the first time to work in the Napa, and I worked at Screaming Eagle. I had a 1 month stint at Screaming Eagle, which Luke
God.
O'Quinnigan sorted me out. Luke sorted me
No,
out.
I mean, that is just holy grail stuff. How much of it did you drink?
crazy
Did you drink
stuff.
lots?
You know, they were quite frugal. I mean, every drop, I worked it out. A bottle is about $800, $1,000. So every drop is sort of, it's $1, just over $1 a drop. I mean, 20 rand a drop. So they didn't really sort of hand it out as sort of dopwijn.
Freely as they might have, yeah.
No. But it was an incredible visit, and during that time I met the owner, one of the fund owners, who then was involved in setting up a fund in South Africa, and they had just purchased Mulderbosch in 2010, and I'd said to them when I left Screaming Eagle, I said, listen, I love my job at Klein Constantia, but if you ever do decide to do something in South Africa, please give me a call because I'd love to work with you. And so in 2011, I got a phone call.
Wow.
And I was ready to leave Klein Constantia at that time. Lol had effected the sale. I didn't know I didn't really know the new people, and I was a bit itchy, I had itchy feet. I'm restless, Harry. I'm a restless person. I need to move.
I know you are, Adam. I know you better than you think.
Yeah. So it kind of got to the point. I've been there for 8 years. It was a wonderful stint, and I felt it was a good time, as good a time as any, to step aside and to do something different.
Yes.
And that's how I ended up at Mulderbosch.
And did you love it? Was it completely different, I'm sure? Hey? Small family business as opposed to big corporate business. Very different thing.
I did love Mulderbosch. Up to a point. It got very messy with shareholding at one point imploded. But up until that point, it was amazing working with these Americans who, I mean, and I will say this, when I left, and this is going to be on the recording, so when I left...
Well, we'll censor it. We'll see if we can let it slip through or not.
Hans Astrom said to me, and he was the new sort of director at Mulderbosch, at Klein Constantia, he said to me, Adam, just be careful of the Americans. They overpromise and they underdeliver.
Oh, really?
Thought, okay, well, I'm committed now, I'm going. And that was my experience of the Americans, actually, by and large.
Oh, was it?
During my experience, they are so enthusiastic, and they're so good at drawing you in, and they sell you the pitch. They're incredible natural salespeople. So everything that they said they were going to do, I kind of was like, I'm so amped. I so much want to be a part of this project. And we started doing things. But invariably it never really hit the heights that they had sold it as. There were always pitfalls along the way, and there were always things there were always kind of reasons why it didn't really kind of culminate in what...
And do you think maybe they were expecting you to run with the idea and make it happen, or was it them that was tripping and falling?
I realized part of the problem with the States as a market, it's so very complicated. It's a 3-tier market. You've got 52 states, or however many states. 52. Everyone is slightly different, and it's incredibly difficult to prevail in that market. Even internally for American companies, it's hard. So to take a company based in South Africa, and we only represent about 1% of all imported wine in the US, if I understand it correctly. It's tiny. We're nothing in America.
When
And it
nothing
was
anywhere adds, just rephrase that.
it's small. Well, yeah. So I think that was it was really amazing to live that experience. It's been an invaluable learning curve in my life to understand that, because those are hard lessons to learn, but they're
Well,
very,
you know
very
what it
valuable.
is? I think it's brilliant. I think you've had so many very invaluable lessons, and that lesson of humility is probably the hardest and the best one that you've
It's a
learned.
good one.
You know, humility is you have to have. And if you're
Yes.
not born with it or taught it during your formative years, you
Yeah.
definitely need a big fat smack from the universe somewhere to remind you that
Yeah.
humility goes a whole lot further than, its antithesis. So I think your humility is one of the most endearing things about you. You are a kick-ass winemaker. You just are. You're one of my best. You're one of my favorites.
Thank
You
you,
fly
Carrie.
under the radar. You never blow your own trumpet. In fact, all of you boys in South Africa, with very few exceptions, you are all just so unbelievably modest for what you're doing. Anyway, enough blowing smoke. Keep talking to me.
That's uncomfortable. Thanks.
Do you like that?
Don't like it at all.
Keep talking.
So Carrie, yeah. So Milderbosch it was also very good, because when I joined Milderbosch, I asked them to give me permission to do my own thing, to develop my own business, and that was the other attraction of going to Milderbosch, was that I really wanted to grow my own business, and I had registered a company called Yardstick Wines.
Yes.
That Peter Tempelhoff, the sort of virtuoso chef and sort of friend of mine, he was working at the Cellars Hohenhort in Constantia when I was at Plain Constantia, and we developed a friendship, and we started making some wine together. And from that, Yardstick was born. We took it with us to Milderbosch, and Pete sort of he got out of it a couple of years later. It just was so difficult to maintain that kind of constant rapport that we'd had, both being based in Constantia. And I ended up, so Milderbosch is still a partner at the moment. We still haven't finally wrapped up the partnership, but that's the aim. And, that was another really sort of important learning curve to really understand that you cannot serve two masters. It's extremely difficult. To grow your own business whilst being employed and your responsibility lies with your employer, it's hard. So Yardstick has always just been sort of ticking away in the background, and it is still the company that I would like to see grow up in my lifetime. I'd still like it to become a proper wine company.
Oh, really? Okay.
But it's still the dream. Yep.
Where do you run it out of? I mean, are you still making... Does Marvelous come out of the Yardstick company?
Yeah, so I had lots of different labels. Yardstick was originally Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, and then Marvelous was a more supposed to be like a bistro label, very good quality wine by the glass, and there were different. We ended up with 3 different blends: a sort of a Rhone, a Bordeaux, and then a white blend, a South African white, and they went under the Shazam, Kaboom, and Kapow labels. It was
No,
possibly
I
a little
loved
bit ahead
it.
of their time, and.
It was quite sort of...
It was
quite sort of 19 pop arty. Yeah, it was pop arty, comic-y style. It was fun. Yeah,
in the very beginning, and then we morphed it a bit into more kind of just typeface and quite modern blocky fonts. And but look, there were too many things going on, Carrie. I dropped the ball, and I have to take responsibility for not following through enough on so many things. And then I decided in my wisdom that if that wasn't going to work, I was going to try something else called Raised by Wolves, another label existing within the Yardstick stable. And the Raised by Wolves were far more hand-picked, small volume batches. And these vineyards that I'd been working with at Marvelous and all sort of blending all together, I then started bottling separately. And I was really working with some exciting vineyards. I had travelled the breadth of the country. I knew just about every little vineyard that existed where there was a cool story to be told. Old vines or crazy owners or high altitude or whatever it was. And those formed the basis of Raised by Wolves. So, that all stopped in 2021 when I left Milderbosch. and Carl van der Merwe had just left De Morganson, and I was put it this way, I was taken under Wendy's wing to head up.
You were hunted down because Wendy, being one of my best mates, I love Wendy Applebaum. She phoned me. She said to me, "Carrie, what am I going to do?" You know how she loved Carl, how we all loved Carl.
Yeah,
I said, "Well, there's about four people who you can probably afford, because Wendy can afford anybody." And I gave her 4 names, and yours was one of them. She said, "Those are sort of the 4 names that I had as well." I said, "Well, go for it. You could have any one of them. They're all brilliant." And never more happy was I to see my favorite Adam going to one of my very best friends. But you weren't there for very long, or were you? You know, life sort of rushes by.
It was that weird time warpy space between.
Yeah.
You know, we literally left Milderbosch in February. When was it? Sort of May, end of May, and I started at De Morganson in June of 2021. So we were full COVID, full lockdown.
Yeah.
It was a crazy, crazy time,
Yes.
and I made the decision to stop doing everything else. All my yardstick, I made a decision to wind the business down and to focus 100% on giving everything to De Morganson. And, you know, fairly soon...
Which is not hard. It's a beautiful place.
Look, I was so excited to go. I mean, obviously Wendy and Hilton, I had met them before, and I thought they were the most amazing people,
They
inspired.
are. It's like being on the set of a comedy show. If you stay with the Applebaums, they're hilariously funny. They're just gorgeous people. Yeah.
And very high paced and very intense, and I was so looking forward to working in that sort of milieu, and you know, it's just some things don't work in life. You know, I just think the chemistry just didn't fit. You know, I think I probably wanted much more autonomy than Wendy was prepared to provide.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I look back on it now and I understand why it didn't work, and I don't regret it at all.
No, and I don't think she does either.
At the end of the day, what happened was it forced me to make a decision that I'd been avoiding my entire life, and that was to go on my own. You know, so it forced me into a position of sort of duck or no dinner, to quote something that I heard from Michael Fridgen years ago, and I've never forgotten it. I absolutely love this. I love the saying.
It is
So for a
gorgeous,
while
but
there
you
was a lot
know,
of duck, and then one day there was absolutely no dinner. And it was the best thing that's ever happened to me, to be quite honest.
I always remember I have a brother and sister. The 3 of us are extremely close. And we've done most things together, but interdependently, really, for our whole lives. And at the beginning of every summer, it's, you know what kids are like? It's not really warm enough to swim yet, but you've got a swimming pool in the garden and you want to swim. So we used to put our cozies on round about sort of late August, which is really way too cold to be swimming. And we used to hold hands, and we used to, one hand you hold a brother or a sister, the other hand you hold your nose and you run and you jump. And whenever I'm scared of anything in life, I imagine that I've got Mark and Ellison with me, and I'm holding my nose and I'm going to run and jump into that icy, freezing cold water. And that's sort of my duck or no dinner. You either come up and gasp for air, or nobody ever sees you again, you know. And I think you did it at just the right time. It was a difficult time because, as you say, we'd come out of the weirdest time on planet Earth ever. That I can't believe we ever had to live through it, and it was hard. It was very hard in South Africa, and more specifically here, because our esteemed government closed down the liquor trade during...
It was a disaster. It was a
disaster.
It was a depressing time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Carrie,
so what did you do?
Just for 2 seconds there, I just need to check this guy's working behind me in the winery. I want to make sure he's doing the right thing.
Okay, perfect.
I'll put my back to him. Hold on 1 sec.
Okay.
I had a moment of terror where I thought... we're blending some rosé, and I just thought, I hope the correct tank has been hooked up, because we were doing the barrels when I started the interview, and he's moved on to a tank. It is the correct tank, so we can continue. I'm at ease.
That could have been, yeah, a monumental cock up. That,
Look,
yeah.
these things have happened. I've had a couple of serious blunders in my life. So it's almost like when something like that happens in the cellar, I've learned never to get upset
No,
because the person who made the fuck up really
yeah,
didn't want to do it. And they've probably learned a lesson that they will never forget, and it'll actually make them a much nicer person for it.
much better.
Because the universe has given them a solid PK.
So you left DMZ, and did you revive your yardstick?
I'm in the process of doing that, but I mean, I had to hustle. I had no income, and
Yeah.
I had to do everything. I mean, that was it. That was the moment that I'd been avoiding my entire life, and there I was. I've kind of 3 kids, varsity, high school. It's the most expensive time of my life.
Ooh,
And,
I know. But now, where's Mrs. Mason in all of this? Because you have to
Louise,
tap dance a bit, When Mr. Mason is only dancing on one leg, then Mrs. Mason, I'm sure, jumped in and did what she had to do, didn't she?
well, Louise is a very talented artist,
Yes.
and she exhibits with Everard Reed.
Yes.
And so we've been lucky that she's also brings in money through the sale of her art. But
Yes, of
the
course.
art sales kind of disappeared over COVID. I mean, it was difficult.
Everything disappeared.
It was just in that time of everyone was in complete sort of financial stress.
Oh, it's free fall, yeah.
What saved me, and this is how it all worked, was I gave Direct Wines a call, and I said, listen, you guys buy a lot of wine from South Africa, and there's these travel bans. You cannot get your buyers to South Africa, but I know what you're looking for, and I know the styles you're looking for. Can I be your man on the ground and just help you source wine? And it was perfect timing, and they were very receptive, and so that was something that started me going.
Brilliant.
And
Okay.
then at the same time, a friend of mine who had been having wines made for him up at Friesenhof said to me, listen, Adam, Jan is not as involved as he was. There's a little bit of a kind of a rudderless situation on the winemaking side. Perhaps they could do with some consulting. And, that happened. And at the same time, I had Shirley van Wyk from Ter Paisible give me a call and say, we would like to meet and see if you'd like to be involved in this project that we have in Franschhoek. So I was, once again, it's very serendipitous. The universe did step in and provide at a time that could have been a complete financial disaster for me and for our family. And never worked harder in my life for about 6 months. Can you hear me? Am I still there? No, we're still there. No, we're good. Sorry, I dipped away for a while. I can go back a bit. Can you still hear me, Carrie? June 2021, I went solo, and was very lucky to be able to find work as a consultant. And how I pitched it, Carrie, was also there's so many sort of wineries. And a lot of the businesses, the wine businesses in the country, cannot afford top salaries. So I went in and said, listen, I'll provide expertise and advice and winemaking, but at a sort of a discounted rate. So I've taken on a handful of people to help me sort of bring in what I would have been bringing in as an employee of one business previously. So that's how it's worked. I spread my time over sort of three major consulting clients, and for the rest of the time, I'm working on my own business. And
That's very clever.
One up to speed. I've been very lucky, Carrie. I mean, it's more luck than anything else. I think it's just the timing was very good. The industry was very depressed. People needed help. I was independent. And I was available, and that's how I see it. It was just very, very, very fortunate
there we
to be
back.
that.
Adam Mason, we're back to my divine timing,
Yeah, possibly.
Definitely, we're going to write a book. I'm going to put you into one of my chapters of my book. So that brings me also to through this wonderful journey that has been yours, it brings us to a very interesting little property that is one of your consults called Terra Paisible. What is that French? I mean, it
Yes.
doesn't sound like French to me.
It is French. Yes.
Is paisible possibility, or what is it in French?
It means peaceful land. Terre paisible. So
Okay.
peaceful land.
Okay, and
Yeah.
who's Robert Levy?
So Robert Levy is he's the owner, and he's Belgian, and has lived, I think, most of his life in the Congo, and was a financier, and
That's a good thing to be if you buy a wine farm, hey?
yes,
a very good thing
I think
to be
that's
as a
how most of the
banker.
people start.
You need to own a bank.
Yeah. But he's from what I can say about Robert, I've met him probably 5 times, and I like his style of management. He's got he empowers people, gives them a job to do, and lets them sort of run with it. And he's very generous. He seems sort of very kind to the people around him.
Does he?
And
Okay, cool.
yeah, and
Kind is good.
yeah,
If you can be kind, be
he's
kind.
he's kind. Yeah. So I think he's got a heart for Africa too. So he wanted to invest in Africa and to be doing something worthwhile in Africa.
Eds,
hope
what
that
are
noise
you
in the
doing in
background
the
is not a problem.
background? It sounds like you might have a
washing
butchery
barrels.
out the back, or it's probably my divine timing that says I'm not allowed to be speaking to you for too much longer. I want to speak to you all day because I love you. But so you are consulting, and
Zoe.
that's where I caught up with you the other day.
Yeah.
The wines that you're making just smell and taste of you, because I've been in the industry long enough to know that every winemaker has his own stamp and his own smell and his own taste. I can smell you boys long before I could almost 100% infallibly pinpoint which was your wine,
Yes.
and which was John Seacombe's wine, and which was Niels Verberg's wine. I know you all have your own special smell, and yours is just one of, you know what, Adam, I was thinking about it. Your wine is very savory, and I think it might come from time in France, where those beautifully elegant savory Bordeaux blends sort of, they capture you before you know it. You've fallen deeply, desperately in love with them. But your wines have this savory freshness on them. So there's never an overabundance of sort of sticky ripe fruit or over extraction. Whenever I've tasted an Adam Mason wine, I always think, it teased me so much. I want to open another bottle to just see maybe if it gives me that tiny bit more next year. It's gorgeous for now, but it holds a promise of something just a tiny bit more every time. Do you know what I mean? It's like a savoriness that promises
that's the best comment that I could ever wish for. I mean, that's exactly
Is
the
that what
kind
you
of wine
want?
that I want to be.
Well, that's
Yeah,
what you've got.
yeah.
That's just what you got. They're gorgeous.
Savory, balanced, fresh. I mean, we must never forget that the fruit of the vine is fresh. Grapes are fresh and alive when you harvest them, and I very much believe that needs to be evident in the final bottled wine too. It needs to be fresh and vibrant and alive.
Well,
And
that's
savory for me is good.
Savory's good for me too. There's not many. There's
Savory's
not
good.
many who get it right. It's very good because you can make shitty savory wines that taste like they need to go back into the vineyard and ripen up a little bit more. You've got it bang on. And these little wines, for people who are listening and watching us, Terra Paisible, peaceful land, peaceful place. The wine is gorgeous. Where does everybody buy them?
So there's from the website. I think there is a link on the website.
So there is an
where you
online
can
website. Okay.
drop on. And they are recently launched. So if I'm not mistaken, you'll get them at retailers like Norman Goodfellows.
Yeah, Norman Goodfellows has got some, I
and-
think.
Yeah. So, but I mean, Carrie, I haven't seen many in the trade, to be honest.
No, there's not lots. It's
still
beautiful.
very,
Let's tell them
very
about the
early.
label. The label looks to me like, I told you, it looks like a scan of a recently pregnant woman. That label, it's beautiful, but it looks like a fetal. It looks like the gynecologist scan machine. What is it supposed to be, Adam Mason?
It's actually a cross section of a grape, sort of backlit.
Is that what it is?
I understand how it can look like an embryo. I think and perhaps there's a universal kind of message in that.
There is.
And
it is embryonic.
To the petri dish. We're looking at the embryo in the petri dish. And,
yep.
It's very modern. It's very stark, and
it's beautiful.
It says what's inside the bottle. It says that this is about grape, which I like.
I like that too. It's quite honest.
And it's also it's monochromatic, which I also, from an aesthetic perspective, I quite like. Sort of monochromatic. It fits with the savory, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the whole thing hangs together beautifully. I think I'm going to ask, it's Shirley, isn't it, Van Wyk?
Shirley Van Wyk, yeah.
I'm going to ask her for some pictures and things, and maybe we can put them, I don't know, the kids do all of this for me. I'm terribly technically challenged when it comes to all of this. So I know that there's a YouTube thing, and I know that there's a podcast thing, but I'm sure there must be a place for a picture. And I'm going to write a newsletter. So we'll put all of those things together so that everybody can see what you're doing.
Have you heard of Instagram?
Don't get too cocky with me, Adam. I go on Instagram. I know how to use Instagram. We could put it. No, we could put it on Instagram. That's a good idea. Okay. You boys are going to have to save me. You know that. I don't want to become one of those stupid old ladies in the industry. Shoot me. Put a bolt through my head before that happens, will you? I do know about Instagram in the meantime.
Let's have a bottle of wine before we have any further talk of bolts through heads. And that's
I've got some nice wine in my cellar that I know you would all love to come and share with me. So when I feel that it's nigh, I'll phone you all. When you all get that same phone call, come. Because you'll get something nice out of the cellar, I promise you. Adam, thank you, my darling. I love you. You're clever. You are soulful. You are artistic. You are a wonderful husband and a wonderful dad and an unbelievable winemaker. Thank you so much for everything you do in our industry. We love it.
Carrie, thank you very much. It is way too much praise. And I really do appreciate your support and your interest in what I'm doing. And it's been a pleasure sort of spending an hour chatting with you and catching up. Thank you very much.
Huge pleasure as well.
Another production from Solid Gold Podcasts.